Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this super rainy Thursday morning. I am Chloe Tetro, the coaching lead here with ReadyCare. For this morning, we're going to be looking at the psychology of a fresh start. So the fresh start effect, what that involves psychologically and why we get that. I'll start on Monday. I'll start in September. I'll start at the new year. So we'll have a look at what's actually involved in that process and the positives and negatives of it, and more importantly, how you can leverage it going forward. So a lot of us do that. We'll say, look, it's Thursday. I've just had 3 Subway cookies for my my breakfast because I was passing by Subway. And I've been very good now for the last couple of weeks, but jeepers, they were singing a siren song to me. And we'll say, look, I'd signed up for this program to look after my diabetes, various different metabolic conditions. But look, I'll start Monday now again. I'm after making a mess of it now for today, so I'll start on Monday. So it's not just a little pep talk or motivational speech that we give ourselves, though partially it is. But it's really rooted in how human minds understand time, identity, and change. And you might be going, Chloe, go on away now with your mind, identity, and change. That's just because you don't want to start right now. And that's partially true, which we'll have a look at now in a sec. So that fresh start effect, basically it refers to the motivational boost that people feel right before or right after a meaningful time marker. So things like 1st of January, we all know that. A birthday, so my 50th's coming up now, and after then I'm gonna hell for leather now with this health kick I've been flirting with, or even the start of the week. And for an awful lot of people, we're programmed from a very young age in this part of the world, it's different in other parts of the world, to view September, autumn, as this is your fresh start. We're plagued with the back to school advertising from about August, which would put absolute lumps of depression on you. But from a very young age, we've kind of kept that school semester type of way of viewing the annual course of the year. So even in workplaces, you have your I was going to say first trimester, but that's a whole different ball game altogether. The year is divided in those type of ways. So we have these psychological markers, and there's researchers in 2014. So Di Milkman, which is a great name, and Riz, which is a fantastic name as well. So Milkman and Riz found that people are more likely to commit to goals after particular markers. For example, gym attendances rise by about a third on Mondays. That's the day that I'll say I'm absolutely not going to the gym on a Monday because it's going to be packed and I'm going to get absolute social anxiety. No, thank you. But we notice these things, right? Everybody goes to the gym on a Monday. So we treat these time points like chapter breaks in a book or, in a YouTube video. So it's the simplest way I can put it is this is the end of the old me. This is the start of the new me. And there's a whole lot of really, really interesting neuroscience behind that, but I'll bore everybody to tears by going into it for today. And I'd probably run over time a million times over. So that's the condensed version of it. So temporal self-appraisal is one of the terms for it, which just basically means we look back at our past selves, so 2024 Chloe, and we judge it as less capable and less disciplined. At the same time, we'll view ourselves either on the precipice of a clean state that starts on Monday, or we are a clean state, Freudian slip. So that mental distancing, this is something I see loads in one-to-one sessions, and it's really enmeshed with the all or nothing people would have quite a lot of that. I have a lot of that myself, mea culpa. And it's basically this idea, I don't know if you can resonate to it, and if you can't, you say, Chloe, you're a nut job. Fair enough as well. Basically, it's this idea that all of your past foibles, right? Things that you're not too proud about, that lives in old me, right? This, and you've this kind of Homer Simpson-esque character built up of, like, slob on the couch, not looking after themselves, really letting themselves go. And it's all exaggerated, by the way, can I just say? So all of the things you don't like about yourself particularly get pushed into old self, and huge amounts of Olympian version of traits get placed on new me. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with living in hope, with visualizing yourself, getting with your higher aspirations, getting with your better traits. There's nothing wrong with that. Where something difficult can arise is that you basically make this evil twin of yourself, right? So you've got the light and the dark version of yourselves, where one of them has no bad traits at all. They're so perfect. You envision them, they're beautiful, the sun is shining, they're going to the gym, they're running to the gym. They look amazing. They have all of their Tupperware color coded with all these beautiful green vegetables that definitely are not in the end of the fridge rotting. But really kind of slightly a bit over the top, right? And the difficulty isn't with envisioning you reaching those things. The difficulty is in the value ethics you place on that. So one version of you, yuck, terrible, disgusting, hate that person. The other version of you, incredible, perfect. There is, they do nothing wrong. And the problem with that is it is exceedingly, my word of every week, unsustainable, because, newsflash, we all have lazy days. We all have bad night's sleep. We all have a really busy day where you get in and you say, actually, I can't be arsed, and when that starts to happen, when you thought, I have to be perfect, because if I'm not, oh my God, no, don't bring me back. I'm Shadow Homer. And Shadow Homer is disgusting and I don't want to be that person. Oh God. No, that's it now. I've ruined it. Right? I don't know if this is sounding familiar to anybody. I've ruined it. I'm vile, terrible creature. I'm going to revel in my couch rot for a few days and I'll try again now on Monday. Actually, look, I've got a holiday coming up in 2 weeks, so I might as well do it in 3 weeks' time. Right? Super familiar. Human condition, nothing wrong with that. I'm one of those people as well. But basically what that does is, unless I'm perfect, I'm terrible. Right? So when our actions don't match the person we want to be, it creates that huge inner tension. And a fresh start does help to resolve that tension. So we tell ourselves, that was the old me, this is the real me now. And landmarks can feel important because they stand out in our memory. So our brain highlights them, like highlighter, literally, and that helps us to focus our energy and the intensity of our goals in much more manageable chunks. Now, what's interesting, what I think is interesting, is at a fresh start, we're more likely to see, as I said, the change as part of who we are rather than just what we do, right? And that's where disparities can come in, where something quite positive, which is, look, we have these markers, because if we didn't, we'd go crazy as human beings. We love patterns, we love safety, stability. On Tuesdays, we wear red. On Wednesdays, we wear pink. These kind of markers of time, because the immense hood of time would absolutely make our brains blow up if we didn't have little ways to measure it, right? Now, the problem with that is that the reality of it rarely works out. So the postponement trap is basically self-evident in what it's called. It's constantly putting off, it's like I'm talking to myself here, constantly putting off today what you could do tomorrow. Wait, no, the other way around. That basically, in all of the accumulations of pushing the can down the road, kicking the can down the road or pushing it, I don't know, whatever you're into, it basically delays action all the time. And what starts to happen, as I said, is that black and white thinking, that if we promise ourselves a radical transformation, from now on, no sugar, then a tiny single slip feels absolutely catastrophic because it means you're not the person you thought you were. You're not this brilliant, amazing being. I mean, you are, but you also contain multitudes, thank God. We've got two sides for a reason. Uh, Feeling like there's no room for anything that you view as ugly or that you reject, or even labeling these things as ugly. Like, God love us, if a friend of yours came in, they were like, look, I've had the worst day ever, can we order a takeaway? You wouldn't be like, oh my God, you are repulsive. Get away from me. Shake a can. Shh, get away, demon. You wouldn't. You'd say, yeah, look, do you know what, in the grand scheme of things. But the way that we view ourselves, there's a set of rules for everybody else. There's a set of rules for ourselves. That's just, again, human condition. So the other problem is, I usually say it this way to myself and clients, is let present you do a kindness for future you, because the present you in the future is going to really not like past you. And what I mean by that is, if you say, I've got loads of paperwork now, but you know what, I could do part of it today, but I'm not going to, and I'm going to let a lot of that go until Monday. Monday's going to roll around, and Monday you's going to go, you absolute curse word of a person. Why would you do this to me? Do you not realize how much work I have to do now? And then you'll end up fighting through time and space, which is probably a sign of things not being chickadee boo mentally. So micro fresh starts, not microwave starts, as I previously called it. Hang on, I'll go onto that in a second. So a way to view these temporal markers, right? Mondays, September's, end of the holiday, start of the holiday, Christmas period, which, by the way, for most people, I found out Christmas period seems to be 8 weeks long. But if you think of all of this, like financial budgeting, if that makes more sense to you than it does to me, when a new month starts, you might feel free to spend differently because you have closed the books on the old month, new fresh paycheck, new fresh things to do. But the fresh start effects will work in a very similar way. We mentally closed last week, we're on to this new week, etc., etc. Now, because the brain is a prediction machine, a fresh start changes the prediction that we make about ourselves, which can be good, as I said, or it can be not so good. That new me succeeding is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant for motivation. It is absolutely brilliant for motivation. Now, the big problem, as I see it, another big problem, she says, the big problem is, just because you have the motivation doesn't mean that you have the tools, right? Tools and come from restructuring your day, restructuring your life in very tiny, 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 tiny ways that basically are able to hold that new version of you. So if none of your weak habits, WEEK, if none of your week's habits have changed. So what I mean by that is, if you're still working overtime, you're still staying 2 hours up in the evening past the time you know that you should, because you've made no room in your week to have any time for yourself, as you're begrudgingly exhausted, but going, I am having time for myself, or I'm not answerable to any of these people, which most people do. If you have a week like that, and you expect yourself on Monday to be absolutely rejuvenated, I have all this energy, incredible, that is insanity, right? You can't, it's not going to be viable, right? That new version of you is not going to take, it won't be viable, because what's holding it is the wrong thing. It's like planting a seed in sand and going, why won't you grow? I don't know if seeds can grow in sand, maybe they can. But basically, the environment has to change a little bit, and it's keeping that in mind. So there's that old adage of 1% in the right direction per day, I mean, is 365% better than last year, right? So being able to say, I might have had one meal off, but tomorrow And I use food analogies a lot because, of course, that's the milieu that I'm in, but this can be applicable to anything, right? But Duolingo is sending me death threats at this point. So I say to myself, I'll open it up once. If I'm on Instagram more than 3 times, I open up Duolingo. If I choose to do it, great. If I don't choose to do it, that's also fine. But I know I've opened it for that day, and that's okay for me at the moment. So 1% better is usually going to be a lot more fruitful for you in the long term than putting all of your eggs into your future self basket, who's going to look at you and say, look, I'm carrying other stuff. I don't have all the room for all these eggs. So how to use them wisely, how to use these fresh starts wisely. The micro fresh start is much better than the macro fresh start. Something like tomorrow is much, I sound almost philosophical here. Something like tomorrow is better than next week. So reframe each day as the clock's gone back to 0, you start again, right? That's a much easier headspace to long-term do better in the thing that you want to do well at. You don't have to be perfect at it. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good or the progress. You don't have to be perfect at it all of a sudden as this new reincarnation of yourself with no bad traits, no nothing, and rejecting all of your human traits. All you have to do is give yourself a chance to try again. I'm just imagining toddlers, like if you saw a baby and you're like, look, you're either getting up and running or just don't bother standing. That's the kind, I know it's silly, but that's the kind of silliness we put ourselves up against. So micro fresh starts, better than the big ones, unless it's Sunday and tomorrow's Monday. So self-compassion is one that I talk about all the time because basically research shows that people who treat themselves kindly, surprise, surprise, after setbacks bounce back more quickly than those who are harshly self-critical. Now, reread something over the week that basically, I didn't read it, actually, I'm lying. I was watching a YouTube video. It was the philosopher Alain de Botton, I don't know how to say his name properly, Alain de Botton, who basically said any critical voice that we have is a voice that we learned to adapt from outside, right? So we take on the voice and criticisms of those in our lives. So sometimes it can sound like your brother, sometimes it can sound like your father, it can sound like whatever it is. And sometimes we have that critical voice that we've adopted from them. Just in case somebody might say these things, we best say them to ourselves first because it's going to hurt a little bit less and it'll keep us on the straight and narrow. But if you imagine a 5-year-old that you follow all day long, right? And you say, you're absolutely terrible. You're absolutely disgraceful. Nobody likes you. No one's going to like you because of the way you look. No one's going to like you because of something you ate. No one's going to like you because you didn't log into Duolingo. That child's going to have absolute lumps of depression and just not want to engage in the world. And that's exactly what we do to ourselves, because newsflash, most of us have the emotions of a slightly older than 5-year-old operating. And if you absolutely begrudge yourself all day long, you're going to be miserable and likely, well, first of all, have a terrible experience of life, but putting that aside as if it's not important, you won't accomplish your goals, which is just the least human thing I'll say today. But, if you're very goal orientated and human emotions feel like something like, just buck up, pull up your strap boots or whatever it is people say, you won't accomplish your goals, basically, if you're really harsh on yourself. So narrative integration, again, fancy way of just basically saying, the way that we see the world needs to have markers for us. As human beings, we are absolutely obsessed with stories, the start, the middle, and end, the narrative of everything. So having that narrative, these narrative markers in our week, in our months and years are actually really, really good for us. So instead of splitting into failed past me and redeemed present me, tell a much larger story, right? If you can, right? If it fits within the remit of what you can hold today. So that slip was part of my learning curve, right? This fighting guy. Who is he? Gone. MMA fighter, you win or learn. Win or learn. Who said that again? I can't remember. But basically, holds true. So that keeps your identity coherent, right? You're not splitting into like good me, bad me, unlovable child, Olympian god, all these different things. It's just you've continuously been yourself. You're setting yourself some targets. And this might sound silly, but I promise you, so many people do this unconsciously. That little split, the Homer on the couch versus this Uber person. And habits over moments, that's the big one. Fresh starts might ignite the initial motivation, but your daily practices will cement your identity. So your renewal should be that spark, not the engine. So in closing, when you slip, try to say something like, I'm learning, I'm doing my best here. Practice the next good choice, right? If you've, like Andrew says this quite a bit, our clinical lead, if you've had a meal off, focus on one meal at a time. Same thing that they'll say to people who are trying to give up cigarettes, alcohol, one day at a time, one meal at a time, and just be kinder to yourself in it all. I hope you found this helpful. Sometimes it can be helpful to see that you're not the only person who thinks a certain way, and that these are universal human patterns, and that the pattern in itself is just the pattern doing its thing, that you don't have to actually take part in it. You can step outside of it and say, look, I choose differently today. So hopefully you found that helpful. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can pop them in the comment section. Have a lovely rest of your week, and we will see you guys next time. Adieu.